they would actually talk about this. When I was a child, I had, like I said, there's a good possibility that I was going to die by the time I was 9. So I actually had to invent everything by the time I was like 7. Everything: cars, houses, um, cannons, drilling rigs, everything. It was pretty well known that basically I was going to die by the time I was 9 or 6. Basically, they estimated my chances for survival at 70 or 50 or 30%. So, anyway, I basically had to come up with everything by then. And actually, in the end, I actually came up with it in like 6 seconds or something or something ridiculous like that. But at first, I had to invent everything. So I was allowed to walk and to be outside and outside my house at 471 Mountain Drive, basically. And it would be a sunny, clear day, and I would have to invent everything, possibly even four-legged animals. It's hard to say. Like I say, I invented the financial system. I invented everything, basically. And I had to do it all by the time I was 6 years old, or 3. Because my chances for survival dropped extreme, what's called dropped exponentially past those points. So it's pretty well known that I was probably going to die by the time I was 8 or 9. There was, they gave me 30% chance of survival, or 12, or something ridiculously small like that. So anyway, so I was going to have to invent everything. So I would sit there and I'd work and I'd go from my house to from inside my house to outside my house. And I think they might have broken it up a little bit because my head hurt every single day. Like every hour, my head would just hurt because I was having to have to think about so many things and having to have to think about everything, like fuel injectors for diesel engines, the carburetor for an engine. I was having to have to design it all in my head. So, the real world effect of of who I am or what I was or naming America was quite, like I say, exhausting. And so sometimes they would even talk about it. But some people who actually had no knowledge of me or actually had seen what I had done as I invented everything from steam engines to everything. So it could be on file, so it could be used. And it was ridiculous. Um, like I say, a lot of people, I remember some talk about basically people watching me or knowing of what I had done. And it was quite extraordinary that people actually knew. Because like I said, my head hurt every single day. I was that one person that had to invent everything. So, and I did. Or at least I invented it enough so that other people could just take it and walk with it. And a lot of people would be like, blah, 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 blah. And those people are still out there right now annoying. Because they have no idea what happened or what was going on or what I had to do when I was a child. And invent everything from the tricone drill bit to modern day drilling equipment. So, anyways, a lot of stuff, and it made my head hurt. Like, like every single day, I would go to sleep with a headache, and it would just hurt to think after a while. And after a while, other people were like, we can't keep putting him through this. We have to give him a rest. So they would give me a rest or so I could just think about it. So I could just, not think about things. Because every single day I was designing things. Everything from high beams on cars or the rules of the road for the cars to other things. It was just too much for me. My head my brain would hurt. Like it was like you ought to try designing a whole government system and a whole environment or a whole system of government. So anyway, I did it when I was like 7 or 8 or 9 or 6. Technically, by the time I was 6 or or um, or 12 years old. By the time I was 6, technically I was 3 years older than I actually was. And by the time I was actually by the time I was 7, I was actually 14 years old, technically, because there's a little bit of a difference, and it's kind of hard to explain. And many people go, blah, blah, blah. It's like you don't understand what the hell happened or what I was doing. So, so technically, in some strange way, I had actually lived 7 more years than most people even know about, because there's 7 years there that never happened, because technically we did it as something else, and then we actually, when we switched over, changed. It actually became, so I restarted back at 0 or back at 3 or 2 years old, and then continued on. So I had actually lived and actually experienced 7 more years or 4 more years than anyone else. And I actually remember thinking about it when I was like 14. I was like, yeah, I wonder if they know that I'm actually, or when I was 7 years old, I was thinking about it, and I was like, I wonder if they know I'm actually 14 and not 7, because I've actually lived like 7 more years than anyone knows about. Although I can't remember those years now, but I had actually lived more years or spent more time than anybody else knows about. And that adds to my legacy and part of what made me different or unique, because no one, I don't think anyone else has ever gone through that or experienced that. And no one will ever know, well, except for the fact that I'm making these videos now, but no one would ever know it, or I've known it. But I remember thinking that in school. I was like, I'm actually 14 years old. But nobody knows that, do they? Anyway, some people said that eventually I'd forget, and I have, basically. But technically, I've lived extra years. Well, I mean, a lot of extra years than I actually know about. So anyway, technically, well, it's only about 7 more years or 4 more years than my actual age. So although technically I'm 40 or 41, I'm actually like 44 or something like that. It's kind of weird. It's where I'm actually like almost my sister's age or something like that in actual years, because, well, not really in actual years. I haven't actually aged that much. It's because there's a little bit of a difference. So anyway, it's complicated. It has to do, I suppose, with naming America. Anyway, when you name a country, or when you own a country, you have to invent for the country and stuff like that, and all that. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't really matter, and it's just all crazy and complex. So, and technically, I was already Lucifer Star. It's just that I was reinforcing my existence as Brian, I guess. I don't really know, and I don't really care, because I'm Lucifer Star and Brian, and I'm Lucifer Star and Brian. It's all very funny and ridiculous, but it's very strange, and I don't really care. But anyway, I always knew who I was ever since I was a child. So anyway, I suppose no one's actually ever experienced what I've experienced. Having lived 7 extra years practically than anyone knows about. So my life has always been kind of strange. Naming America, inventing the word gold or California and all that other stuff. And for many years, they were like, "You're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy." And many people would tell me in private, they'd be like, "They'll tell you you're crazy, but I'm telling you you're not. What you remember did happen, has happened. So remember that." Anyway, lots of people would reinforce my conscious awareness and reinforce it, because while other people were trying to remove my memory and make me forget who I was, other people were trying to reinforce it to try and keep me remembering who I actually was, so I didn't forget, because I am the president of America, or at least the person who named America. So anyway, none of it really matters, because it's just like, well, Anyway, but Nixon and a bunch of other people were trying to take over my country. Like I said, I built and sponsored and paid for Chernobyl, or Bry Pit. I used to call it Bry Pit, and it's Bryantown, not Britain. But anyway, whatever. And I loved the Queen. She was a very gorgeous young 16-year-old. Poor thing. She put up with so much. She's a great woman. Yeah, I mean, she didn't know what. I think sometimes that's why they chose her so young. I was like, really? Because he was like 40 years old. They show it now like he was actually like she was getting married to like a 20-year-old or something. No, he was like 40. He was like 50 years old king or whatever, and she was like a 16 or 12-year-old queen. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. He was like 3 times her age. Anyway, whatever. It was really horrible. I think he died or was assassinated or something. Yeah, but that's who she married. It was like this 40-year-old guy. They show it in the wedding thing, like she was like this whatever girl. That's why they did the coronation and they did the wedding or whatever separate, because he was like 40.